What if a single song could rattle an entire regime? In September 2022, a 25-year-old Iranian named Shervan Hajipour uploaded a song to Instagram. It wasn't flashy, just his voice, his pain, and words of countless strangers. Within 48 hours, it had over 40 million views, and then he vanished. Arrested. That song? Badiye.
برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمن.
Its lyrics were made from real tweets, messages from everyday Iranians, starting with one simple word, Badiye, for dancing in the streets, for kissing someone you love, for women, life, freedom. These weren't just lyrics, they were confessions, demands, dreams. They were everything the regime tried to silence. But why did this one song hit so hard? Why was it feared so deeply it got its creator thrown into prison? To understand, we need to look beyond the music, to the decades of resistance, to the long battle for women's rights in Iran, and to see how protest anthems like Badiye don't just echo pain, they ignite hope. Iran's struggle with women's rights didn't start in 2022. It's a story that winds through revolutions, repression, and rebellion. And it's still being written. Before 1979, Iranian women had increasing access to education, voting rights, and the workforce. But the Islamic Revolution in 1979 flipped everything. Iran's king, the Shah, was overthrown after years of protesters. People wanted freedom from corruption and Western control. But instead, they got a strict religious regime. Overnight, mandatory hijab laws were enforced, and the so-called morality police began patrolling the streets. They weren't just symbolic. These were real officers, armed and state-backed, tasked with controlling how women dressed, walked, and even laughed in public. A loose strand of hair could mean detention. A bold lipstick could mean assault. And women's public lives were shrunk to fit within a strict patriarchal system. But Iranian women didn't go silent. From the very beginning, they resisted. In classrooms, in courtrooms, in the streets. In 2009, the Green Movement erupted after Iran's presidential election was widely seen as rigged.
Iran's election commission announced President Ahmadinejad's landslide victory, 62.6% of the vote, with only 33.75% going to the opponent.
Millions believed their votes were stolen, and they flooded the streets to demand answers. But this wasn't just about the ballots. Women in particular used the moment to speak out, not just for political rights, but for personal freedom.
From the minute we leave the house in the morning, we're worried. We wonder whether our coat sleeve is too short, but our problems aren't just with the morality police.
This wave of resistance had been growing under the surface for years, especially online. Iranian feminists, artists, and dissidents built underground networks, sharing stories, music, and videos. By the time Mahsa Amini was arrested in 2022 for allegedly wearing her hijab improperly, the powder keg was already set. Death didn't start the movement, it detonated it. To understand Badiye, you have to understand this history, not of silence, but of defiance. On September 16, 2022, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman named Mahsa Amini died in the custody of Iran's morality police. Her crime? Allegedly wearing her hijab too loosely. Photos of her unconscious in a hospital bed, bruised and broken, spread across social media like wildfire. Within hours, Iranians poured into the streets. They weren't just mourning Mahsa, they were mourning every woman who had been silenced, punished, or disappeared under the regime's rules. Her name became a rallying cry. Zan Zendegi Azadi. Woman, life, freedom. The chant rang out from Tehran to small towns, shouted by schoolgirls, whispered by grandmothers, painted on walls, and posted across banned platforms. Mahsa wasn't the first, but she became the symbol, the face of everything people were tired of hiding from. And this time, something was different. The protesters didn't fade. They evolved, they spread, and they became increasingly led by women, fearless, unveiled, confronting armed police with nothing but voices and signs. Even in the face of death, people found strength in each other. Mahsa Amini's death was the spark, but it wasn't just grief that followed, it was fury, and it was unstoppable. While Iran burned with protesters, a young singer-songwriter named Shervan Hajipour sat in his room, watching the grief unfold online. People weren't just angry. They were speaking from the heart, tweeting why they were protesting, what they were fighting for. Nearly every tweet began with one word: Badiye. 4. Shervan started collecting them one by one. He read hundreds, then thousands, and out of the ocean of sorrow composed the melody. For haunting piano progression in his quiet voice, he wove those tweets into a song. But these weren't just poetic lines. Each one captured the truth people risked their lives to say out loud. For dancing in the streets. In Iran, public dancing, especially by women, is banned. Even joyous moments have led to arrests. This line wasn't metaphor, it was a memory. For kissing someone you love. Public affection is criminalized. Holding hands, embracing in public, acts that could trigger fines, detention, or worse. For women, life, freedom. Not just a chant, a worldview, a challenge to the very roots of a system that fears female autonomy. These weren't just abstract grievances, they were lived experiences, turned into music, turned into memory. Badiye wasn't a protest anthem in a traditional sense. It wasn't loud, didn't call for violence, it was something more dangerous. It was honest. Every line carried someone's truth, not just politics, lived experiences. Shervin had captured the soul of a revolution in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but the regime was watching, and they were terrified. It took less than 2 days for the authorities to arrest Shervin Hajipour. His song had gone too far, said too much. It gave a voice to too many people. He was charged with spreading propaganda and inciting violence, even though there wasn't a single call for it in the lyrics, just longing, just truth. But the regime didn't just fail to silence him, they amplified him. While Shervin was locked away, his song became louder. It played in protesters across Iran. It was smuggled onto TikTok, echoed in whispers in universities, hummed on sidewalks. Iranian celebrities spoke out, activists abroad took notice. Then, something unexpected happened. Thousands of miles away, in Buenos Aires, at a Coldplay concert, Badiye was played live. Actress Kashifte Farahani sang it on stage. The crowd, thousands of strangers from another continent, stood in silence. The message had broken borders, and in 2023, Grammys honored Shervin Hajipour with the first ever Best Song for Social Change. First Lady Jill Biden handed out the award, calling the song a powerful and poetic call for freedom. But while the world applauded, Shervin was still living in uncertainty. He wasn't in prison, but he wasn't free either. The regime had let him out on bail, but not off the hook. In March 2024, that uncertainty ended with a sentence. More than 3 years in prison for a song made of tweets. But the world hadn't stopped watching. Protesters continued. Awards were given. Headlines kept his name alive. And in September 2024, under mounting pressure, Iran's government finally relented. Shervin was pardoned. He walked free. But by then, his message had already escaped the walls they tried to build around it. Badiye became more than a song. It became an archive of pain and a future of hope. It didn't just echo the movement, it carried it. In a country where speaking out can cost your life, this song became a lifeline, a way to feel less alone, a way to resist without saying a word. It echoed Iran's long feminist tradition, from feminist poets like Feroz Farrokhzad, who wrote boldly about women's pain and power, to the women who burned their headscarves in defiance. Each lyric was tied to generations of women who had risked everything to exist freely. And at its core was a simple defiant phrase, Zen Zendegi Azadi, woman, life, freedom. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise. A future where women could choose, speak, move, exist without fear. It became a shared thread of resistance. And for millions, Badiye became the soundtrack to that promise. And unlike past protesters that fizzled under fear, this one kept evolving, led by women, backed by men, echoed by exiles. It wasn't perfect, but it was united. And now, long after the streets have quieted, Badiye lives on, in underground art, in whispered lullabies, in global protesters chanting woman, life, freedom. Its legacy isn't just musical, it's revolutionary. But this story isn't just something we remember, it's something still unfolding, right now. As Badiye echoes across the world, Iran's regime continues this crackdown, not just on music, but on women's very existence in public life. Cameras track students at university gates, drones patrol the streets. There's even an app called Naza, letting citizens report on one another for improper hijab. But the resistance hasn't stopped. In February 2025, in the city of Mashhad, a woman removed her clothes in public and stood on the police car. A fearless protest against control over her body, a symbol of ultimate defiance. Around the same time, Kurdish activist Pakshan Azizi was sentenced to death after a trial widely condemned by the UN and human rights groups. Her story became yet another reminder. Iran's regime isn't finished silencing its critics. Still, the whispers haven't quieted. They've just gone underground. Songs like Badier aren't just memories, they're battle hymns for those still resisting, every day, in silence and in song. Badier wasn't made for the Spotify charts. It was made for survival. It taught us that even in the face of repression, truth still sings. That even in silence, voices echo. And that power of music to move people is happening elsewhere too. Click here to see how a pop song unexpectedly became a protest anthem during the 2024 protests in South Korea to impeach President Yoon Suk Yeol. If you want to go deeper, all the sources I used to make this video are linked below in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story. Not for the algorithm, but better yet, the people who still can't tell theirs.